What if surviving a vampire-infested cruise wasn't enough, and one of your friends suddenly became an unstoppable vampire? Kakeru is brought before a mysterious ritual where Kaiser welcomes him into the vampire bloodline. A maid sinks her fangs into his neck, and after enduring excruciating pain, Kakeru collapses as his transformation begins. Later, the medical center turns into a bloodbath. Bodies are scattered everywhere, and the newly transformed Kakeru is feeding on Akari's father. No matter how much blood he consumes, his hunger refuses to fade. Elsewhere, Akari wakes up trapped in a cage with Yuzuru, but manages to escape using the same locking mechanism from earlier. However, when she opens the door, she is horrified by what she sees. At the same time, Goika is captured by the female vampire, who discovers that she contaminated the pool with a different type of blood. The vampire brutally beats her in front of Toma. Just when all hope seems lost, Kakeru suddenly appears and kills the vampire with a single devastating punch. But before anyone can react, the entire cruise ship violently shakes, leaving everyone wondering what has just crashed into the vessel. And now, as the mystery deepens, let's continue with the final part of the story, which begins with a memory from many years ago. Little Eva is searching for Noah, her cat, calling out for it through the streets. Spotting it ahead, she happily asks what it is doing and promises not to be angry about the fish it stole. Suddenly, the cat freezes and hisses at something in front of it. Rubbing her eyes, Eva looks again and sees a strange, murky black smoke approaching. After that, everything becomes a blur. The only thing left behind is one of Noah's shoes, now held in Kaiser's trembling hands. As search efforts continue, Kaiser desperately asks why they still cannot find his daughter after 2 days. A copper explains that all they have to go on are the cat and the shoe, and that Eva appears to have vanished without a trace. People quietly gossiped that Sir Howard had already lost his wife the previous year and expressed sympathy for him. Devastated, Kaiser cries out for his daughter, insisting that if he loses her too, he will have nothing left. Time passes and eventually he places the shoe atop a coffin as it is lowered into the ground. Later, however, everything changes when a shocking discovery is made. Kaiser rushes to a location where Eva has been found alive. Overjoyed, he calls out to her, but she simply averts her gaze. A woman explains that the poor child barely speaks and remembers almost nothing except the name Noah, which is what they have been calling her. Looking into her eyes, Kaiser notices something is different. Then, to his shock, she simply meows at him. After bringing her home, Kaiser begins noticing unsettling changes. One stormy night, strange noises come from Noah's room. When a loud crash follows, he rushes upstairs and finds several dead mice scattered across the floor. Looking deeper into the room, he spots Noah crouched behind a cupboard. Asking what she is doing, he watches her slowly turn around. As she glances behind, a live mouse is hanging from her mouth, still wriggling as she bites into it. The sight sends chills through him. Horrified, he pulls her away and wonders if some terrible sickness has taken hold of her mind. From then on, he kept her isolated. Whenever guests asked how Eva was doing, he politely explains that she is still a little ill. Everyone remarked that her return is a miracle, and Kaiser agrees, though his worries never fade. As time passes, he once called her to dinner one evening, but Noah pays no attention and continues scratching at the floor. Furious at her response, Kaiser bashed the table to scream, so as to make her hide behind the sofa. Filled with regret, he admits no father should have acted that way, and decides to stop calling her Eva, choosing instead to call her Noah. Slowly, she peeks out from behind a sofa. Kaiser raises his hand and suggests that they make up. Noah approaches and embraces him. Smiling gently, Kaiser assures her that everything will be fine. A special doctor will arrive tomorrow and help make her normal again. Hearing her stomach growl, he remarks that she must be hungry after everything she's been through. After all, she is still his child. At that very moment, Noah opens her mouth, revealing sharp fangs, and bites into his neck. Back in the present, the clown races through the ship, muttering that they must have hit something because that jolt was too strong. He worries that if he doesn't find a fresh severed head soon, Malia will have his own. Rushing into the medical center, he expects to find what he's looking for. Instead, a flash of lightning illuminates a horrifying scene. The clown freezes in terror before screaming that they are all in serious trouble now. Elsewhere, a maid kneels beside her sister's corpse, sobbing uncontrollably. Kaiser approaches and grabs her, demanding to know why she's wasting time when Noah still hasn't been found. Moments later, Malia and the clown arrive with alarming news. They report that the medical center is filled with dead bodies and that the ship appears to have struck something. No one can explain what could possibly have collided with a vessel so far out at sea. The situation is still under investigation, and there may even be a breach in the hull. Malia notes that the valves should prevent seawater from flooding the ship, but the clown reminds them that the disaster in the medical center remains unresolved. Hearing all of this, Kaiser begins trembling, before suddenly laughing. Through gritted teeth, he wonders whether everything is truly the result of an accident or if someone is responsible for it all. Meanwhile, Toma calls out to Kakeru asking where he's going. Kakeru tells him to stay focused and lower the lifeboat. Offering him a small smile, he turns and heads back into the ship. Toma curses under his breath, but admits that he's counting on him. As the lifeboat descends, he realizes that it's actually working. For a moment, he worries that it will crash into the lower deck, but instead it becomes caught on a railing. Looking at the tilting ship, Toma nervously wonders whether they'll even make it to the water. Finally, the boat breaks free and crashes into the sea below. Relief washes over him. Smiling for the first time in what feels like forever, he shouts that they actually escaped the nightmare. Grabbing the rope, he calls for Kakeru to hurry down and join him. Instead, Kakeru throws the remaining rope into the boat. Toma immediately realizes what that means and screams in disbelief. A powerful wave strikes the lifeboat, pushing it farther from the ship. As the distance grows, Toma repeatedly calls out for Kakeru, unable to accept what is happening. Watching the ship drift farther away, Toma realizes that from this point onward, Kakeru will be completely on his own. Kakeru lets out a heavy sigh, relieved that he didn't bite his friends. Ever since his transformation, every time he sees a human, the only thing he can think about is biting them. Earlier, it had been the only thing he wanted. Yet he knows it's wrong. He had already fed, recalling Agari's father and the others he consumed. Trembling, he realizes that he's killed many people. What frightens him even more is how easily he did it. He can't understand why he was so bloodthirsty not only towards humans, but towards other vampires as well. The truth slowly settles in. He's no longer the person he once was. When he looked down at the corpses, he felt nothing. That realization terrifies him more than anything else. Shivering, he questions what he has become and whether he is nothing more than a monster that devours humans. Elsewhere, Akari regains consciousness in the hallway and notices several blood-type bags nearby. Suddenly, Goichiro desperately cries out that he is type O and needs a type O blood bag immediately. Akari asks where she can find one, and Goichiro angrily tells her that there should be some in the refrigerator, calling her an idiot and ordering her to hurry. As Akari rushes to get the blood, Yuzuru slowly opens his eyes. A moment later, a scream echoes through the hall. Akari turns and is horrified to see Yuzuru repeatedly kicking a corpse's head. He continues stomping on Goichiro's skull while shouting in anger. She quickly stops him only to realize that Goichiro is already dead. Just then, voices approach from nearby. Realizing that someone is coming, Akari and Yuzuru hide in time. From their hiding place, they overhear several officials discussing the massacre. One official notes that despite the injuries sustained by many victims, someone deliberately killed an astonishing number of people. Another suggests that it may have been the work of a high-ranking vampire, while his companion dismisses the idea. Suddenly, someone calls for the captain saying that a communication line has been established. Confused, Akari wonders why they are hiding and whether these people are ordinary sailors. Before she can move, Yuzuru gently grabs her arm and silently urges her not to make a sound. Looking closer, Akari notices the sailors forcing blood into the injured vampires. When asked who was responsible, one surviving vampire weakly responded that it was a Japanese boy. Realizing the danger, Akari quickly takes the opportunity to flee. Moving quietly through the corridors, she heads deeper into the restricted sections of the ship. Meanwhile, Malia announces that she will search the lower levels while the clown checks the guest rooms. The clown casually remarks that he is feeling hungry. Suddenly, he pauses and senses something unusual. Sniffing the air, he comments that something smells delicious nearby. Irritated, Melia tells him that he will be fed soon enough and orders him to continue the search. As she hurries away, her thoughts turn to Kaiser. She knows they must find Noah as quickly as possible for his sake. Recalling their shared memories and the bond they once had, she inwardly vows to find Noah and bring her back. Elsewhere, Kaiser is in a grim state. Feeding on a victim, he remarks that we must hunt down the demon responsible for all of this. A disturbing smile spreads across his face as he leaves to continue the pursuit. At the same time, Kakeru suddenly finds himself in a strange place. Countless voices surround him, whispering from every direction until they become unbearable. Covering his ears, he shouts for them to be quiet. Then he abruptly jolts awake and finds Noah standing before him. Without hesitation, Noah embraces him and softly calls him Michiru. Confused and frustrated, Kakeru demands answers. He asks what is happening to him and wants to know who Michiru is. Noah gently places her hands on his face and gazes into his eyes. Instantly, something changes. A memory is beginning to surface within him. Suddenly, he finds a man standing in the middle of a forest. His stomach growls with hunger, and he bitterly remarks that he may go another day without food. Alone in a foreign land, he wonders whether he is going to die there. Then a sudden rustle comes from the bushes. Startled, he turns just as a pigeon bursts from the trees and flies into the sky. Suddenly, the pigeon is snatched out of the air by a shadow. Looking up, Michiro sees Noah descending from above with the bird clenched between her teeth. She drops it in front of him. Surprised, he asks whether she caught it for him. After roasting the pigeon over a fire, Michiro eagerly eats it. The meal feels so satisfying that he remarks it is as though he has been reborn. Attempting to share some of it with Noah, he introduces himself properly, explaining that his name is Michiru and that he comes from Japan, far to the east. Smiling awkwardly, he admits that he doesn't even know if she understands him. Noah simply stares at him. The following day, several pigeons are piled in front of him. Amazed, Michiro remarks that Noah is incredible at catching them and jokingly wonders whether such skills are taught in her country. After selling the birds to a butcher, he earns some money. Feeling grateful, he tries to give Noah one of the coins, but she simply walks away without taking it. The next day, however, the butcher pays him a larger amount than before. Confused, Michiru asks what the problem is and wonders why he is receiving a larger amount of money despite bringing the same number of pigeons. The butcher explains that every bird has arrived in perfect condition. Although beautifully prepared, each one bears the same strange marks around the neck. Curious, he asks how Michiru manages to catch them so cleanly and whether people hunt this way in his homeland. As Michiro recalls Noah's habit of biting them, he struggles to answer. The discussion soon turns into an argument, though. Noah pays no attention and simply wanders off on her own. Back in the present, Akari carefully makes her way down the stairs. She feels uneasy but knows she has to keep moving. Eventually, she enters a large hallway. The vast, silent space immediately makes her nervous. Suddenly, something begins to roll towards her from the darkness. At first, she can't tell what it is, but it keeps coming closer without stopping. Frozen in place, she watches as the object finally rolls to a stop at her feet. To her horror, it is a severed head of the laughing clown. The sight instantly petrifies both Akari and Yuzuru. Akari and Yuzuru run as fast as they can through the hallways while the clown's laughter echoes behind them. Akari is still bleeding and Yuzuru trembles in fear as he repeatedly calls out for his sister. Behind them, the clown lifts his severed head and wonders where they have run off to. Spotting a nearby door, he questions whether they might be hiding there. Desperately, Akari urges Yuzuru to open it quickly. The moment the door swings open, both of them freeze in shock. Beyond it lies a vast forest. As they move inside, closing the door makes a rustling sound behind them, which is heard by the clown. Taking the opportunity, they rush inside. Deep within the forest, they discover a small house. Inside, everything appears strangely normal. A mother is cooking in the kitchen while her daughter sits nearby looking at her phone. Looking around, Akari remarks that these people seem ordinary. They don't appear to be vampires and none of it makes sense.
They were on a ship, so how could there possibly be a forest? Relief washes over her, but exhaustion quickly takes over and she collapses unconscious.
A short while later, the clown arrives at the house and rings the bell. Politely, he asks whether two humans have come by. The mother answers that no one has arrived. Narrowing his eyes, the clown asks whether she is certain, and she calmly assures him that she is. Meanwhile, Akari wakes up in a bed inside the house. The daughter explains that she cleaned her wounds, gave her painkillers, and stopped the bleeding. She gently tells Akari not to be afraid and explains that vampires are not all the same. When Akari tries to get up, the girl stops her and clarifies that she is a vampire who does not attack humans. She further explains that the humans living there are under special protection and hopes Akari can trust her. Looking beside her, Akari notices that Yuzuru is standing inside a cage. The girl quickly explains that it is only for safety, as the outside world has become dangerous. She promises to introduce Akari to a friend soon. Unnoticed by them, her father quietly peers through the doorway, watching everything. Within Kakeru's memory, Michiru notices that it is getting late and suggests that they head home before people start worrying. Receiving no response, he glances at Noah and remarks that her clothes seem different every time he sees her. He jokingly suggests that she must come from a noble family. Suddenly, a scream pierces the forest. A young woman is desperately trying to fend off a pack of wolves. Realizing she's in danger, Michiru rushes toward her and places himself between her and the animals. Just as the wolves prepare to attack, they suddenly freeze. Opening his eyes, Michiru is astonished to find that they have completely vanished. The rescued woman thanks Michiru for saving her. Her beauty immediately strikes Michiru. Curious, she asks whether he's Asian and remarks that such travelers are rare. Flustered, Michiru can barely respond. Nearby, the wolves continue growling from the bushes, but Noah turns toward them and fixes them with a chilling stare. The wolves immediately retreat. Later, the village butcher rushes to greet his daughter, Tanya, relieved that she is safe. However, he gives Michiru a strange look. As time passes, Michiru and Tanya grow closer, often spending moments together and sharing smiles. One evening, Tanya expresses surprise that Michiru does not know where Noah lives. She points out that, for all they know, the girl may be completely alone. Michiru admits that Noah rarely appears and that he has always assumed she belongs somewhere in the forest. Tanya grows serious and remarks that such carelessness is dangerous. Lately, there have been rumors of vampires. Michiru laughs and admits that he's surprised she believes such stories, but Tanya insists that they are real. Many people have already died, and witnesses claim the creatures move so quickly that they vanish from sight. Above them, Noah silently listens from a rooftop. At the same time, elsewhere in town, another victim is discovered after being drained of blood. Officers arrive at the scene as frightened townspeople demand to know why the culprit has not been caught. One officer attempts to calm the crowd, but a hand rests on his shoulder before he can respond. The newcomer is Kaiser. Politely apologizing for everyone's worries, he encourages the townspeople to report any clues they may discover. Curious villagers quietly discuss him, noting that he is Mr. Howard, the man who lived in the hilltop castle for the previous year. Many speak highly of him, even crediting him for improving the town's roads. As Kaiser searches the streets, he asks a young boy whether he has seen a blonde girl wearing a white dress. When the boy shakes his head, Kaiser concludes that she may no longer be in town and decides that the forest is the only place left to search. Hidden nearby, Noah overhears everything before quickly running off. Back in the present, inside the forest house, the clown happily eats a meal while bloodstains remain scattered around his mouth. Curious, he asks what exactly he is eating. The mother explains that the dish is made from blood, since her daughter recently developed a dislike for drinking blood directly. She spent some time researching alternatives. The clown admits that it is still inferior to fresh blood, though it reminds him of his days as a human. The mother smiles and remarks that she is glad it suits his taste. Suddenly, shouting erupts elsewhere in the house. The father drags Akari into the room and orders his daughter to return her immediately and apologize. The father argues that the girl clearly belongs to someone else and accuses his daughter of stealing her. The mother reminds him that he promised to behave during the trip, but he dismisses the concern and insists that none of it matters. The mother coldly replies that it truly does not matter
because Akari will be drained sooner or later. Then the father throws Akari aside. As the family continue arguing among themselves, the clown suddenly pauses. Looking thoughtful, he remarks that he has just remembered something important. He was supposed to find Noah. Instantly, everyone in the room falls silent. In the next moment, the entire scene around them begins to change. Suddenly, the illusion shatters. What had appeared to be a warm living room instantly transforms into a dark and horrifying chamber. The comforting scenery disappears, revealing the grim reality hidden beneath it. Beside the table is a cage, dismembered corpses hung on hooks, while mutilated bodies lie scattered across the floor. The daughter stares at the horrific sight in disbelief and cries out that she hates it. Turning toward her mother, she demands to know what all of this is. She reminds her that she specifically asked her to use artificial blood for everything. The mother quickly dismisses her concerns, insisting that artificial blood is not good for her. Horrified, the daughter realizes what that means and desperately asks her not to tell her that real blood was used in the food as well. At that moment, an announcement echoes throughout the ship. A voice states that this is an important message to all kindred on board. Due to the ongoing emergency, the hypnosis affecting each room has been temporarily released. The speaker apologizes for the inconvenience and asks everyone to remain calm while the situation is handled. Elsewhere aboard the cruise ship, Melia quietly murmurs that she has finally found Noah. At the same time, Noah tilts her head toward Kakeru and slowly leans closer. To those watching, it almost appears as if she is melting into Kakeru, as if the boundary between them is beginning to disappear. Within the memory, Michiru asks whether vampires truly live forever unless they are killed, and Tanya confirms that they do. Michiru jokingly remarks that he is jealous of anyone who can know the future forever, but Tanya notes that most people are actually frightened by the idea. Trying to reassure her, Michiru promises that he will protect her no matter what. As they speak, Michiru notices Noah sitting silently on a nearby branch. Looking at her, he states that even if she were to become a vampire, he would become one as well. Holding her close, he assures her that no matter how the world views her, they will remain together forever. Hidden in the shadows, a vampire observes the scene. Later, Kaiser meets with the man who remarks that Noah will finally make him feel like a true comrade. Then, the man reminds him of the promise he made. Kaiser calmly confirms that in exchange for the information he provided, his blood relatives will be allowed to join them. Grateful, the man kneels and thanks him. Several days later, Michiru falls ill with a fever. Tanya prepares to leave and promises that she will return soon with medicine. Michiru insists on accompanying her because it is already dark outside, but Tanya gently refuses, reminding him that he is sick and needs to rest. As she turns to leave, something suddenly grabs her dress. Startled, she looks down and realizes it is Noah. Smiling faintly, Tanya asks whether she is worried about Michiru as well, noting that such behavior is unusual for her. However, as she prepares to continue on her way, a flash of lightning illuminates the darkness. The lights briefly disappear, and heavy rain pours from the sky. In that instant, Tanya catches sight of Noah's eyes glowing brightly in the darkness. Terrified, she stumbles backward and runs. Those eyes remind her of the stories surrounding vampires. Moments later, she is intercepted by someone who had been secretly following Noah. Soon afterward, Tanya is killed. When Michiro receives the news, he is devastated. He is informed that Tanya was murdered and that witnesses reported seeing a suspicious man along with a strange little girl. The wounds on Tanya's body resemble the same bite marks linked to the recent vampire attacks. Refusing to believe it, Michiro struggles to accept the explanation. Later, Noah enters his room and innocently asks him to play. The moment he sees her, Michiru rises and grabs her face, carefully examining her teeth. To his surprise, they appear completely normal. Seeking answers, he later visits a police officer. The officer explains that suspected victims are disposed of before they can become vampires. Although he admits he doesn't truly believe the stories himself, he claims it helps prevent public panic. He even mentions that a stake must be driven through the heart as part of the procedure. Leaving the station, Michiru feels hollow and exhausted. Eventually, he visits Tanya's father. The butcher admits that he doesn't believe Michiru killed her. However, he confesses that the little girl has always unsettled him. The way she kills birds never sat right with him. He remarks that they can no longer rely on the police and advises Michiru to return to his homeland because there is nothing left for him there. Days later, while working, Michiru accidentally splashes flour onto Noah's face and quickly apologizes. Trying to distract himself, he decides to bake Tanya's favorite bread. He remarks that if he can make it properly just once, perhaps it will bring him some comfort. Borrowing an oven from a neighbor, he works late into the night. Once the dough is ready, he mentions that he needs to bake it, but sees that Noah has already departed. He notices the footprints left behind by Noah. Following the plan, he follows them through the darkness. The trail eventually leads him to a castle. Following the footprints inside, Michiro pushes open the massive doors and enters. The interior is filled with countless mirrors reflecting endless gazes back at him. Standing at the center of the room is a lone figure. Michiru immediately recognizes him and declares that it is him. Before he can react further, Kaiser calmly orders that he be captured. Instantly, ropes emerge from all directions and wrap around Michiru, restraining him where he stands. Kaiser walks towards Michiru and explains that he discovered Noah always came to him whenever she left the castle. Curious, he investigated him further and admits that he never expected Michiru to come all the way there on his own. Staring directly at him, Kaiser demands to know who he really is and what he means to Noah. Before Michiru can answer, Kaiser suddenly crushes his knee, forcing a groan from him. Kaiser remarks that Michiru is clearly human. Unlike ordinary humans, he is not frightened by their gaze, nor was he ever bitten by Noah. Kaiser admits that perhaps it is nostalgia or something as simple as friendship, but Michiru seemed different enough to warrant investigation. In fact, he had initially suspected him of being a new breed of vampire. Trembling, Michiru realizes the truth and quietly remarks that Kaiser really is a vampire. Smiling faintly, Kaiser confirms it. He explains that any human who learns their true nature must be dealt with. He gives Michiru two choices. Either he can join them or become their dinner. From behind the curtains, numerous grotesque vampires emerge. Kaiser notes that many humans from their stockpile have recently died because of an epidemic. Their numbers are limited, and if the vampires become too hungry, it will be troublesome if they begin hunting openly again. Just as Kaiser was about to continue, Noah suddenly runs into the room and rushes straight toward Michiru, startling everyone. Softly, she asks him to play. Kaiser immediately calls for Noah to come back, but Michiru apologizes to her instead. In one swift motion, he frees himself from the rope and places a small knife against Noah's neck. He warns Kaiser that if he doesn't want the child to die, he must stay away. He demands that they should never be allowed near humans again. He remarks that Noah should have been able to survive on animal blood just as she always had. Frustrated, Kaiser wonders why she isn't running away. He then offers Michiru another chance. If he joins them, he will live forever, and Noah will finally have a true friend. Of course, in the eyes of the human world, he will be considered dead. Suddenly, another figure steps out from behind the curtains. Michiru freezes in shock when he recognizes her as Tanya. Kaiser calmly remarks that Michiru understands his position is difficult, but insists that the offer is not as terrible as it sounds. At that moment, a memory flashes through Michiru's mind. He remembers Tanya's words. Without hesitation, he rejects Kaiser's offer. Tears well in his eyes as he firmly states that he refuses and that Kaiser heard him clearly. In response, the blade lightly presses against Noah's neck. A tiny drop of blood appears. The sight instantly enrages Kaiser and the surrounding vampires. With furious cries, they lunge at Michiru. He is struck repeatedly, punched, and overwhelmed as the vampires swarm him. Throughout it all, Noah simply stares at him. From the impact of the blows, a wave was released inside the castle, leading the castle to shake. Within the memory, Michiru recalls a conversation with Tanya. He had once promised that if she ever became a vampire, he would become one as well. He had insisted that he no longer cared how the world viewed them and that they could remain together forever. But Tanya had firmly rejected the idea. She explained that she hated it. According to the stories, a vampire's heart gradually grows colder and colder. One day, it would become easy to abandon everyone they once loved. She did not want to become a monster, nor did she want to spend eternity living as one. Smiling sadly, Tanya pleaded with him that if she ever became a vampire, he should kill her without hesitation. As the memory fades, Michiru closes his eyes and softly murmurs her name. At that very moment, the massive castle finally crumbles around them. As the castle crumbles around them, Kaiser approaches a pile of rubble and discovers the broken body of Michiru lying beneath it. Michiru is barely conscious, weakly whimpering as he struggles to breathe. Kaiser moves to finish him off, but suddenly blood splatters across his face and an eyeball is hurled from him. Staggering back in shock, Kaiser groans in pain. He demands to know why Noah would do this to him as he glances at her. But what he saw were those bulging black eyes staring directly at him. For a moment, he can only wonder who or what she truly is. What happens next terrifies him. A massive jaw, far too large and unnatural for a child, opens wide. Noah lunges onto Michiru's body and begins devouring it. After feeding, she collapses and lies motionless. Meanwhile, townspeople rush to the scene. Tanya's father stares at the ruins and remarks that Mr. Howard's castle has completely fallen. He remembers telling Michiru to return home. However, when he later checked the place where Michiru had been staying, he found a note. In the note, Michiru explains that he began suspecting something when he examined the marks on Tanya's body. He writes that Noah is most likely not human and that she appears to drink blood from her prey. The 4 fang marks he observes support that conclusion. However, he also notes that Noah is not the actual culprit. The bite pattern found on Tanya is different from the wounds Noah leaves behind. Because of that, Michiru believed the real killer was connected to the place Noah always returned to. Following her trail led him directly to the castle. After hearing the contents of the note, Tanya's father angrily orders everyone to burn the place before sunset. Nearby, Noah lies motionless among the destruction. Her sharp teeth glimmer faintly as she rests, like a lifeless doll. Soon afterward, Melia arrives and urgently calls for Kaiser. She reports that their identity has been exposed and insists that they must leave immediately. However, Kaiser barely listens. He grabs her and demands to know what is wrong with Noah and why she's not moving. Melia is startled by the fear in his eyes. She explains that humans have already set the forest ablaze and survival must come first. Back in the present, Melia recalls that Noah remained in that dormant state for nearly a decade before eventually returning to normal. Ever since then, Kaiser has lived in fear of history repeating itself. Although they spent years expanding their influence, he never forgot what happened that day. Now, as he watches Noah and Kakeru, he wonders whether the same thing is happening again. Regardless, she concludes that they must be separated. Suddenly, several vampires appear before them. Melia immediately demands to know what they are doing there and orders them to step aside. Instead of obeying, the vampires attack. Realizing something is wrong, she notices that even the lower-ranking vampires are ignoring direct orders. She wonders whether Noah is somehow responsible, and if so, why they are still able to move freely. Before she can react, another vampire attempts to ambush her from behind, but the butler intervenes instantly, striking the attacker aside. Calmly, he remarks that he expected something like this. He explains that Kaiser had already warned him that something was wrong. According to his observations, many vampires now believe that Noah has abandoned the senior members. Within moments, Melia and the butler find themselves surrounded by an overwhelming number of hostile vampires. Elsewhere, Koichiro reports the situation to Kaiser. Trembling, he explains that Thing tore apart wounded vampires and devoured them. He remarks that he has never seen such a raw and uncontrollable impulse. Despite the horror of it, he advises Kaiser not to kill him. Instead, he suggests studying him. Handing over a set of keys, he explains that preparations have already been made. Kaiser asks if everything is ready, and Koichiro confirms that it is. He explains that the restraints were specially designed, and muscle strength can even be regulated through drugs if necessary. Confidently, he assures Kaiser that it can be done. Kaiser thanks Koichiro for his work and quietly admits that every time Koichiro violated the rules, he considered getting rid of him. Yet now, looking at the results, he remarks that perhaps he does not regret keeping him around after all. As Kaiser steps into the hallway, he opens a secured door. Behind it, numerous grotesque creatures lie dormant, waiting to be released. Meanwhile, on the deck, Melia curses under her breath, remarking that Noah certainly wasted no time. Suddenly, a vampire lunges from behind and grabs her. Before the attack can continue, a tremendous punch crashes into the crowd, sending several vampires flying in all directions. The newly released monsters surge forward. Covered in distorted eyes and jagged teeth, they tear through the vampires with terrifying force, tossing them aside as if they weigh nothing. Although the vampires quickly regenerate, they begin gathering around Kakeru and Noah, using them as shields. Furious, Kaiser orders the monsters to pull them away. He injects them with drugs, causing them to lose what little control they still have. The creatures immediately begin tearing through the clustered vampires, clearing a path through the chaos. Elsewhere, inside the forest section of the ship, the father nervously speaks on the phone, remarking that the vessel shook violently and asking if they are in danger. Nearby, the clown runs past carrying a body. Looking outside, the man is horrified to discover that parts of the ship are already flooding. At the same time, the daughter suddenly asks what will happen to the humans. Unnoticed by them, Akari and Yusuru have already fled. Seeing how many vampires are moving through the corridors, Akari realizes they can't escape that way. Suddenly, several sailors pass directly in front of them. Confused, Akari wonders if they were somehow overlooked and silently wishes she had studied English more. Continuing deeper into the ship, they pass rooms filled with torture devices, bloodstains, and disturbing medical equipment. Yusuru clings to his sister and mumbles that he's scared. Akari reassures him and explains that the upper levels are filled with vampires, so they need to find another route. As they move farther inside, they come across a massive pool filled with blood. Remembering that their priority is survival, Akari decides they need a place to hide. They continue descending into the darker sections of the ship. The deeper they go, the quieter it becomes. Coffins and lifeless bodies line the floor around them. Uneasy, Akari wonders what kind of room they have entered. Eventually, she tells Yusuru that they should wait there for a while and escape once the ship reaches land. As they sit down, Yusuru suddenly calls for his sister and asks where Dad has gone. Akari begins assuring him that everything is fine, but before she can finish, a face appears beside them without warning. A horrifying blank-faced creature stares at them with a twisted smile. Both of them freeze in terror. The creature immediately grabs Akari and begins dragging her away with drool spilling from its mouth. Crying out, Yuzuru desperately attacks it, trying to force it to let go. The monster casually kicks him aside. Extending its tongue, it leans toward her and prepares to bite. Just before its jaws close, a sharp slash cuts through his waist. The creature is split cleanly in half. Its body collapses to the floor. Standing between the siblings and the monster is Kakeru. Elsewhere, after the swarm of vampires has finally been cleared away, Geyser looks in disbelief and demands to know what is happening. Realizing Kakeru is missing, he angrily asks where the boy has gone. At that moment, Noah weakly murmurs to her father. Meanwhile, Geyser immediately orders the others to find the boy, stressing that he wants him alive. The monsters acknowledge the command and begin crawling through the ship, sniffing out his trail. Watching them, Melia remarks that the creatures are unsettling and notes that Geyser managed to keep their existence hidden from everyone. As one of the monsters catches a scent, the entire group rushes off in pursuit. Meanwhile, Geyser kneels beside Noah and repeatedly calls her name. Suddenly, a different voice emerges from her lips, asking what happened to Noah. The words leave him stunned. Trembling, he questions if it's Ava. Elsewhere on the ship, the vampire is brutally torn apart, his insides spilling out from the damage. Akari thanks Kageru for saving them, but he quickly hushes her. Looking around, he notices rows of coffins nearby. Without warning, the coffins begin opening on their own. Arms emerge first, followed by drooling mouths and twitching bodies as more vampires awaken. Terrified, Yuzuru whimpers, while Akari instinctively shields him. The first vampires that approach are immediately cut down. Kakeru dispatches them in an instant, only using his hands. More rush toward him, only to be slaughtered just as quickly. The fight is completely one-sided, but the sight that leaves Akari deeply unsettled is the eerie smile on Kakeru's face. Elsewhere, the daughter complains that she cannot stand vampires anymore and asks whether they can even survive at sea. Her father dismisses the idea, remarking that they are vampires, not dolphins. At the same time, panic spreads throughout the ship. Groups of vampires surround the sailors, demanding answers about the violent shaking earlier. They want to know whether it is true that the ship is flooding. One sailor attempts to calm them, explaining that even if there is damage below the waterline, the vessel is equipped with systems to drain incoming water. Unfortunately, the explanation only worsens the panic. Hearing the words hole in the ship, the crowd begins shouting. One vampire shoves the sailor aside and orders everyone to move to the upper deck, put on life jackets, and prepare the lifeboats. Soon, frightened passengers begin flooding the corridors. Observing the situation, the butler informs Melia that the flooding rumors have rattled everyone. He also mentions the mysterious shock that struck the vessel earlier. Meanwhile, Geyser finds still speaking to Noah. He continues calling her Ava and asking if it is truly her. Confused, Ava asks what he's talking about and remarks that he's acting strangely. The response overwhelms Kaiser. Through tears, he embraces her. However, as he holds her, her frail body begins changing. Her legs grow thin and aged, her skin wrinkles, and her face rapidly becomes older. Softly, Ava tells her father that she suddenly feels very tired. Meanwhile, in the control room, the bulky manager is shocked to find the sailors laughing, drinking, and acting as though nothing is wrong. Furious, he demands to know why nobody is repairing the damage. One sailor looks confused by the question. In response, he slams his face into the wall and demands answers. He wants to know how the sailor regains his senses and what caused the mysterious shock. Instead of answering properly, the sailor simply laughs and begins talking about the tremor from earlier. Before he can finish, his neck is twisted. Yet rather than reacting in fear, the remaining sailors burst into loud, unsettling laughter. Elsewhere, Akari quietly follows Kageru through the ship. She cautiously asks whether it is really safe to head for the upper deck. Kageru calmly replies that they are not being hunted at the moment. Remembering how cheerful and approachable he once was, Akari can't help but noticing how different he seems. His composure in the middle of this nightmare unsettles her. She asks whether she learned martial arts and wonders if she's seen any of the other passengers. As she continues speaking, Kageru suddenly calls out to her, asking if she should remain quiet for a while, giving her a blank expression. The expression sends a chill through her, and she immediately apologizes. Nearby, Yuzuru trembles as he mentions that Kageru scares him, but Akari assures him that everything will be fine. Suddenly, voices begin echoing from behind the nearby door. Without hesitation, Kageru opens it. Shocked, Akari asks why he would do that. Inside, countless people stand packed together in white clothing. The room is filled with weak voices and exhausted faces. Staring at them, Akari wonders who they are. Kageru quietly observes the scene and remarks that they appear to be humans. After a brief pause, he coldly explains that they are blood packs, humans who are kept alive for breeding and harvesting. Akari is horrified by the statement. Kageru continues, noting that many of them appear to have been kept there for years and may not even be capable of moving anymore. When Akari asks how he knows such things, he shrugs and says it is only a logical conclusion. Vampires rely on human blood as their primary food source. Before she can reply, a weak voice suddenly calls out from the crowd. Covered in blood and trembling, a man desperately pleads for help. He explains that he's Japanese and begs them not to leave him behind. The man desperately pleads for help, explaining his wife was taken by the vampires. Seeing his injuries, Kakeru remarks that he still seems capable of moving despite the wound. In response, he reveals his arm. To her horror, one of his arms has been severed and crudely stitched. Shocked, she asks if those are medical stitches. The man bitterly explains that the vampires keep their victims alive for long periods before finally killing them. To them, humans are nothing more than toys. Falling to his knees, he breaks down in tears and begs them to save his wife. He insists that she's still alive and pleads for help in the name of God. Akari looks toward Kageru, but he offers no response. After they leave the room, the man explains that the guest rooms are on the next floor. He and his wife had tried using the phone when they were delirious and later attempted to escape. As he speaks, Kageru drifts into thought. The strange noise in his head, like constant static, reminds him that he's a vampire. He realizes that every time he kills or bashes something,
The noise becomes quieter and his mind feels lighter. As they move down the stairs and enter another hallway, Kakeru calmly continues walking. When the man insists that they should check first, Kakeru remarks that it is unnecessary because no one is there anymore. Looking around, he notes that the flooding panic likely caused the vampires to scatter. Hearing this, the man asks whether the ship is actually sinking. Kakeru scoffs and remarks that it hardly matters at this point. Soon, they arrive at another room. As the door opens, a horrifying scene unfolds before them. Roses decorate the walls, but hanging from the ceiling are severed human limbs. A body hangs suspended in the center of the room, pierced by countless tubes. Nearby, a bathtub filled with blood contains the severed upper half of another victim, hanging from the hooks. The man immediately calls out for his wife. Looking around in horror, he begs Kakeru to help her. The man realizes that his wife is still breathing and repeatedly calls her name. As Kakeru looks at her, a strange memory suddenly flashes through his mind. The scene feels familiar, yet he knows it is not his own memory. Noticing the tears forming in his eyes, Akari quietly asks if he's alright. Kakeru quickly wipes him away and assures her that he is fine. Lifting the injured woman, he remarks that they need to move upstairs. If the ship is truly sinking, staying there will not be safe. They should reach the upper decks and find a place to hide before deciding what to do next. As they continue moving, Kakeru struggles with the memories flooding his mind. He knows that he is Kakeru, not Michiru. They are different people with different names. Yet he vividly remembers Tanya's face, the moments they shared, and the man responsible for her suffering. The memories feel far too real. Quietly, Kakeru mutters that he will kill Kaiser no matter what. Elsewhere, Melia grimaces at the constant noise and chaos spreading across the ship. She asks where Kaiser is, and the butler explains that he returned to his room with Noah. They need to contain the situation before it grows worse. Melia points out that controlling the crowd will not be easy. Around them, frightened vampires gather in growing numbers. The butler attempts to silence them through sheer authority, but the crowd presses closer and demands answers. They want to know what is happening. Calling out to the butler, Melia asks what he meant when he claimed Noah had abandoned them. The butler explains that their kind originally consisted of outcasts who could never disobey those above them. That had been the natural order for centuries. However, everything changed after the discovery of blood allergies. As their population expanded, they gradually lost control over many of their lower bloodlines. Beyond the reach of the elders, countless vampires multiplied and became increasingly unruly. Human society itself became the most effective tool for controlling them, a strategy devised by Kaiser. Their prosperity was built on that foundation. Yet something about Noah is different. Considering the growing number of recent violations, the disaster aboard the ship, and the failures in leadership, the butler admits that he cannot predict the extent of the consequences. Melia refuses to believe what she is hearing, but the butler calmly tells her not to worry. He insists that he has no intention of rebelling. After all, they still answer to Kaiser and their bodies are incapable of rejecting direct orders. However, if the ship truly sinks, they will sink with it. That possibility leads him to believe that Noah may have her own intentions. Meanwhile, inside Kaiser's suite, the dolls remain arranged beside the bed. Little Eva softly asks her father whether he can sing to her, to which Kaiser gently agrees. Placing a hand on her withered cold body, he quietly lulls her to sleep. At that moment, Melia rushes toward the room. She cannot accept the idea that Noah would ever abandon them. Noah has always been everything to Kaiser. To her, Noah seemed eternal. She cannot believe that someone like Noah would simply give up on life. Bursting through the door, she apologizes for the interruption and reports that the lower-class vampires are flooding onto the deck. She and the others can no longer control them alone. Kaiser immediately orders her to leave him alone. However, Melia insists that the situation is serious. The vampires are agitated, and if nothing is done, Noah herself could soon be placed in danger. Kaiser calmly remarks that if that is truly the case, then he is glad. He explains that Noah was never really his daughter. Even so, he spent what felt like an eternity protecting someone who resembled her. He admits that he never liked the polluted blood that sustained this illusion, and living beside the image of his daughter only brought him pain. Quietly, he remarks that perhaps this is karma. In his eyes, everything is finally over. Whatever inhabited Eva's body has now left it behind. Noah is gone, and as a consequence, she no longer appears to be their master. Shocked, Melia insists that such a thing cannot be possible. Kaiser replies that if she doesn't believe him, she's free to stay and see the proof for herself. It's right before her. In fact, she is too now free.
Since the ship may be sinking at any moment, she is finally free to pursue her own happiness. Still unwilling to accept the situation, she asks whether he truly hates Noah. She insists they could still fight back and defeat whatever is happening. However, Kaiser calmly tells her that it's all right. Refusing to give up, Melia pleads that there must be something she can do for him. After a moment of silence, Kaiser admits that there is indeed one thing he wishes to ask of her. Elsewhere, aboard the ship, Koichiro desperately shouts for more time. A sailor warns him that he cannot continue moving in his condition, and that he will die if he pushes himself any further. Koichiro immediately snaps back, ordering him to be quiet. He insists that he will be fine once he takes what he needs, and remarks that there are matters far more important than his own insignificant life. Confused, the sailor asks what he is trying to accomplish. Koichiro dismisses the question, saying that he would never understand. He then opens a nearby door, revealing a room filled with motionless marionettes resting in silence. Staring at them, the sailor remarks that they are indeed ornaments, while Koichiro mumbles that he knows that Kaiser certainly wouldn't want to leave this world without them. He adds that some things are simply too valuable to let others possess. With that, he picks up a pair of scissors. To the sailor's horror, he cuts open his own wound even further and carves into his hand. Blood immediately begins pouring from the injury. Alarmed, the sailor asks whether he is attempting some sort of transfusion. Koichiro quietly apologizes to Shane, remarking that he needs to borrow one of his dolls. Pressing his bleeding hand into the mouth of a nearby marionette, he allows the blood to flow inside. Moments later, the marionette stirs and slowly awakens. A delighted grin spreads across Koichiro's face. Giggling to himself, he praises the girl and softly remarks that it is finally time to protect the truth. After freeing a large number of captives from the cages while others were apprehended, some repeatedly thanked their rescuers, while others remarked that they are finally safe after being forced to obey their captors for so long. Listening to them, Gakero quietly questions why helping people feels so natural. Only a short while ago, he did not believe he was any different from the monsters around him. Several of the rescued people insist that all they have to do is to follow that guy. As the group makes its way upstairs, a gigantic monster suddenly appears before them. Akari and the others freeze in terror as the creature growls and blocks their path. Gageru immediately orders everyone to get down. The monster lunges forward, and Gageru barely manages to stop the strike with one hand. However, its other arm crashes into him and sends him flying backward. Gritting his teeth, Gageru realizes that he cannot properly fight while protecting the person on his back. Suddenly, the injured woman's husband steps forward and deliberately draws the monster's attention. Shouting loudly, he runs in the opposite direction. The creature instantly pursues him and raises his arm to crush him. Before the blow can land, Gageru appears between them and rescues the husband. Grabbing him, he hurls both of them through a nearby window. They crash into what appears to be a bartender station. The man quickly apologizes, but Gageru tells him not to worry. He explains that the monsters are after him and orders the couple to escape while they still can. Before they can leave, the monster grabs Gageru by the head and slams him violently into a wall. The impact shatters the structure behind him, and blood oozes from his face. Completely drenched in blood, Gageru struggles to rise as the creature prepares to finish him off. As it leans closer, Gageru fixes it with a cold glare. For a brief moment, the monster gets scared. It attempts another strike, but before the blow lands, a sword flashes through the air and severs his arm. A marionette suddenly appears. More marionettes quickly join the battle, tearing into the monsters from every direction. Blades flash repeatedly as the creatures are cut apart. One monster grabs a marionette and attempts to devour her, but another immediately intervenes and slices it cleanly in half. The fierce battle continues around them. Watching the fight, Kakeru remarks that his luck nearly ran out. He honestly believed his bones had been pulverized, yet somehow he can still move. One of the marionettes approaches him and offers a packet of blood. She explains that it is special blood that triggers no allergic reactions and describes it as precious. She adds that Mr. Koichiro sent them and explains that he is a doctor on board the ship. Looking at her carefully, Kakeru asks why she helped him. The marionette replies that he is a rarity. Hearing that, Kakeru smiles faintly and remarks that he knew there was something different about himself. Curious, he asks how she knows so much about him. Instead of answering directly, she calmly states that he needs to feed. Kakeru apologizes and asks whether she can help him. As she moves closer, something immediately feels wrong. Grabbing her face, Gagero remarks that she smells strange. Pulling her into his embrace, he sinks his fangs into her neck and tears into her flesh. As he feeds, he realizes the truth. This is an experimental body, and the others are the same. Taking hold of a sword, Gagero remarks as a tragic situation. In a single motion, he slashes through both their necks. Looking at them, he quietly asks for forgiveness, certain now that there is no doubt about what they truly are. As the survivors continue ascending the stairs, Akari asks the injured man whether his head is all right. He replies that he thinks so. Nearby, Yusuru stumbles on the steps, but Akari quickly steadies him. Anxiously, she wonders what's going to happen to all of them and insists that they need to get off the ship. The man agrees, remarking that escaping the vessel is their only option. Frustrated, Akari questions how they're supposed to steal a ship controlled by vampires. Everyone is already struggling just to keep moving. Even if another monster appears, Kakeru is nowhere to be found. On top of that, she doubts the ship can stay afloat much longer as more water continues pouring inside. Suddenly, Yusuru glances toward the upper deck. As the group reaches the next level, several people notice them. The passengers are shocked by their blood-stained appearance and immediately ask what happened. One man calls for everyone to help them, wondering what kind of nightmare they have endured. More survivors gather around, equally stunned by their condition. Some begin recognizing family members and loved ones among the crowd. As people reunite, Akari is overwhelmed that there are so many humans still out there. Then Yusuru calls out to her and the two rush through the hallway toward their room. Bursting through the door, Akari immediately calls for her father, but the room is empty. Yusuru begins crying and repeatedly calls for him. Holding back her own tears, Akari tries to stay strong. Just then, a violent tremor shakes the ship. Confused voices rise around them as people demand to know what is happening. Grabbing Yusuru's hand, Akari tells him they need to leave. She assures him that their father probably escaped a ship already. Though uncertain, Yusuru wants to believe her. Akari insists that they must work together with the other survivors if they hope to escape. Meanwhile, inside the control room, the manager angrily remarks that there are no competent sailors left aboard the ship. From behind him, a maid calmly replies that there are none. Startled, he demands to know what she is doing there. She casually remarks that it is nothing in particular, which only infuriates him further. Grabbing her by the neck, he orders her to give him a status report and asks whether she has gone insane like everyone else. Through tears, the maid quietly admits that she almost wishes she had. After being thrown aside, she explains that during the initial emergency, everyone worked tirelessly to stabilize the ship. She then reveals that the vessel was specially designed by Koichiro for their kind. Vampires create a shared consensus through unique energy waves emitted from their eyes. The ship receives power from volunteers located in the lower levels and uses that energy to create a controlled hyperbaric environment for both management and entertainment during the voyage. The maid further explains that they attempted to shut down the entertainment systems and redirect all available energy toward restoring the ship's operations. However, the effort failed. She believes that the boy killed many of the volunteers, and shortly afterward, the sailors began losing their sanity as well. Furious, the manager slams his fist down and blames Koichiro and his absurd scientific systems. He argues that a normal ship would have been more than sufficient, but the maid disagrees. She insists that the real problem lies with the crew members themselves. To support her claim, she reveals fresh bite marks on several sailors' necks. Shocked, the manager asks whether the injuries were caused by the boy. The maid replies that the wounds appear too recent and suggests that Noah may have inflicted them while wandering through the ship. Confused, the manager questions why Noah would interfere with efforts to save the vessel, to which the maid admits that she has no idea. As she speaks, she quietly draws a dagger. Without warning, she plunges it into the manager's body. Stunned, he demands to know what she is doing. Before he can recover, another strike pierces him. Moments later, several sailors lunge forward and restrain him. The maid trembles and admits that she doesn't understand her own actions, as she only feels compelled to do it. Elsewhere aboard the ship, survivors continue gathering together. Many remark that after the party, they lost their memories entirely. Rumors begin spreading through the crowd, but most struggle to accept the explanation. The very idea that vampires could exist is simply too difficult for them to believe. Suddenly, one woman realizes that her husband is missing. Panicked, she asks whether he was not with the others. Akari gently explains that those gathered there are all the survivors they managed to find, and that many of the others did not make it. Refusing to accept it, the woman tries to run back down the ship. The others quickly stop her and plead with her not to go. Breaking into tears, she demands that they let her go, insisting that there is still a chance her husband is alive. Before anyone can respond, a violent tremor shakes the vessel and throws everyone off balance. Meanwhile, on the upper deck, groups of vampires continue boarding the lifeboats. Looking through the windows, some of the survivors watch them in disbelief. They question whether the vampires are aware of the humans watching them. Regardless, the vampires appear unconcerned. One man remarks that they cannot simply rush past them if they want to reach the remaining lifeboats. A woman points upward and notices a small boat positioned higher above the others. As they look toward it, the butler continues directing the crowd, ordering everyone not to push and to wait their turn. While monitoring the situation, he notices several humans quietly moving behind the crowd. Suddenly, a scream echoes across the deck. In an instant, chaos erupts as vampires begin fighting among themselves. The butler observes the disorder and remarks that humans and vampires may have more in common than either side would like to admit. Nearby, one vampire stumbles forward, drenched in sweat and bleeding heavily. Desperately, he urges the others to hurry because they need to leave immediately. Trembling, he complains that he feels unbearably hot. Moments later, flames suddenly erupt across his body. The vampire bursts into fire, screaming as his flesh burns away and his bones begin crumbling into ash. Horrified, the surrounding vampires realize that the sun has emerged. Panic spreads instantly. Many cry out for water, while others desperately attempt to flee. However, the flames spread rapidly from one vampire to another. Within moments, a large portion of the crowd is engulfed in fire. The butler watches in stunned silence as the disaster unfolds. The whole deck of vampires are engulfed in fire, and a massive blaze soon surrounded much of the cruise ship. The entire deck descends into chaos as burning vampires collapse into ash. Far away, Toma witnesses the horrifying scene from his small lifeboat. Watching the flames consume the ship's occupants, he anxiously mumbles out for kakeru. Then, through the noise of the chaos, he hears a familiar rhyme being sung. Turning toward the sound, Toma looks across the water and discovers the clown drifting nearby in another boat. Seated beside him is a body, while the clown calmly continues singing as though nothing is wrong. Inside the cruise ship's laboratory, body parts and research materials are stored everywhere. As Kakeru listens, Goichiro explains that the Kindred possess less water in their tissues and significantly more oil than humans. Although rare, there have been recorded cases where some vampires ignited after their body temperature rose due to prolonged exposure to sunlight. Curious, Kakeru asks about the reflections in mirrors. Goichiro admits that the phenomenon remains unexplained. However, he theorizes that the Kindred's extraordinary physical abilities may allow them to move faster than the human eye can perceive. Finding the explanation intriguing, Kakeru asks him to continue. Then Goichiro remarks that Kakeru should already know much of this himself. He asks whether he remembers how it all began. According to Goichiro, the essence of vampirism behaves similarly to a virus that spreads between hosts. Unlike a normal virus, however, it does not fight the human body. Instead, both become a single entity. The result is a being driven by an instinct to eliminate rival bloodlines while possessing immense strength, resilience, and regenerative abilities. At first, Goichiro believed Kakeru was a unique existence created to suppress the vampire population. However, the discovery that memories can be shared through blood changes everything. He now suspects that certain vampires may function as a collective brain of their species. Although he cannot explain why Kakeru was human until recently, he is convinced that events are moving in a strange and unprecedented direction. Goichiro then asks whether Kakeru has noticed anything unusual beyond the craving for blood. Quietly, Kakeru recalls the memories Noah transferred to him. When he asks whether Goichiro truly wants to know, the scientist eagerly replies that he does. Before the conversation could continue, a massive explosion erupts elsewhere in the ship. Water bursts through a damaged cabin and rushes into the corridors. Watching the flood spread, Kakeru remarks that the ship is sinking while they've been standing there talking. Realizing the danger, Goichiro desperately pleads to be taken along. He insists that he can still be useful and argues that there are too many mysteries left unsolved for him to die now. He promises that he can help. Kakeru calmly agrees and approaches him. Then, poking his head, he remarks that he'll simply take whatever information he needs directly from here. Before Koichiro can react, Kakeru sinks his fangs into his neck. Moments later, leaving the body behind, Kakeru walks away. As water continues flooding the laboratory, flames consume what remains of Goichiro until he is reduced to ashes. Meanwhile, on the upper deck, Melia stares at the growing inferno surrounding the ship. Kaiser quietly remarks that he would prefer not to be cremated. Gently placing Eva inside a coffin, he calls out to his daughter. Melia warns that lowering their lifeboat now would be dangerous because countless vampires are swarming in the water below. They should wait until the ship sinks further before attempting to escape. Kaiser bitterly reflects that if he had known Eva still existed within Noah, he would have treated her more kindly. Nearby, desperate vampires continue trying to climb back onto the vessel. Melia immediately cuts them down, demanding to know what they think they are doing. She repeatedly urges Kaiser to get to safety. When one vampire nearly reaches him, she drives it back with a powerful kick. Even after another vampire bites into her leg, she refuses to retreat. Furious, she remarks that she hates seeing them behave like cattle. Although she admits she has never particularly liked Kaiser, she still commands the others to stay away from him. From a nearby doorway, Akari and the other survivors watch the battle unfold. One of the men observes that intense fighting appears to be taking place on deck. Barely holding her ground, Melia calls out to Kaiser and insists that she can still keep them away from him. Then, without warning, the attacking vampires suddenly lose their strength. Relief washes over her as a butler appears behind them. She remarks that his timing could not be better. However, before she can say anything else, his head is sliced cleanly in half. The severed head rolls across the deck and stops in front of her. Stunned, Melia looks up and sees Kakeru standing there. Exhausted from her injuries, she collapses. At the same moment, Akari catches sight of him and realizes it is Kakeru. Walking calmly toward Kaiser, Kakeru offers his condolences. He remarks that what happened was truly tragic. Referring to Eva, he comments that she seemed like a lovely child, and asks whether Kaiser thinks he is saddened by her death as well. Kaiser coldly reminds Kakeru to leave. He admits that he only met Eva a few days earlier and still cannot understand why she died. In response, Kakeru quietly reveals that he remembers everything. Gently stroking Eva's hair, he recalls how the child wandered through the streets searching for a black cat on that day. The words immediately catch Kaiser off guard. Looking closer, he notices something disturbing. Kakeru is smiling, but his eyes resemble Noah's. Turning toward the gathered survivors, Kakeru raises his voice and announces that he has found the leader of the vampires. As Kaiser looks behind him, he is met by the fury of the survivors. The people who suffered because of him stare with anger and hatred in their eyes. Trembling with rage, one woman climbs into the boat and slaps him across the face. She calls him a monster and declares that he is headed for an early grave. Striking him again, she demands that he give her son back and curses him as a sick bastard. Soon, the others can no longer restrain themselves. Pain, fear, and grief erupt all at once. They surround Kaiser, hurling curses at him, wishing for his death, and unleashing their wrath upon him. Nearby, Akari notices tears forming in Kakeru's eyes. To her surprise, he appears genuinely emotional. Suddenly, Kakeru turns toward Akari and remarks that he feels like a bona fide vampire now. He then tells her that they should leave the ship. Confused, Akari asks why he keeps helping them. As Kakeru looks at her, memories flood through his mind, memories he inherited from her father. He recalls Akari's childhood, her father's love for her, and his final words of apology. After a moment of silence, Kakeru smiles quietly, remarking that he finally understood. Then, to Akari's complete surprise, he states that it was love at first sight. While she is left speechless, The survivors continue preparing to escape. Eva's coffin is cast into the sea, and the remaining people descend into the lifeboats. One by one, they move away from the burning vessel as the ocean carries them farther from the nightmare. As Kakero glances back toward the ship, something suddenly catches his attention. Countless torpedoes race through the water toward the cruise liner. Moments later, they slam into the vessel. Massive shockwaves ripple outward, reaching the nearby boats. Flames spread rapidly across the ship as it begins to sink. Water floods every remaining compartment, drowning those still trapped inside. Before long, the ocean completely swallows the vessel. From far away, Toma watches the horrifying scene unfold and can only stare in shock. Dozens of hours later, Toma drifts alone at sea. Exhausted, he wonders how much time has passed since the disaster. Suddenly, a massive shadow appears before him. Looking up, he sees a large armored ship approaching. Rescuers quickly confirm that they have found the survivor. As they examine Toma and Koike, one of them remarks that Koike's condition is critical. Later, Toma awakens in a bed. A doctor greets him warmly, explaining that he was in a serious accident. Toma immediately asks about Koike. The doctor reassures him that both of them were rescued. Looking out toward the ocean through the window, Toma listens as she explains that it is a miracle they survived at all. According to official records, they are the only survivors connected to Noah's cluster. The doctor then explains that the entity known as Noah's vampire once resided within a small blonde girl. However, it apparently sank with the ship. She adds that the girl happened to be near a cat when the entity transferred itself, allowing its entire essence to be absorbed. Fortunately, Kaiser managed to keep the vampire population under control for many years, whereas a cat-like personality could not. She casually remarks that countless lives were lost because of their cruelty, and that their numbers had been steadily increasing. For that reason, measures were eventually taken to eliminate them. When Toma asks when the ship sank, the doctor confirms that it sank before any formal operation could be completed. The exact cause remains under investigation, and it may simply have been a tragic accident. Apologizing, she remarks that she may be overwhelming him with information immediately after waking up. Toma replies that it's all right, and admits that he's relieved. He never thought anyone was actually hunting vampires, and hearing the explanation makes the entire ordeal feel more real. The doctor looks surprised by his reaction. When Toma asks whether she works with the military, she gently shakes her head. She explains that they belong to Lily, a vampire organization dedicated to protecting humans and opposing the consumption of human beings. The revelation leaves Toma speechless. Panicking, he begins shouting, but the doctor calmly reassures him that everything is fine. She explains that they are nothing like the vampires he encountered before. Taking hold of his arm, she gently tells him that he is among friends, and that they will continue his treatment. She casually adds that the infusion connected to him is actually a nutritional supplement designed for vampires. Hearing this, Toma is horrified. The doctor apologizes and explains that because he now knows too much about their existence, they cannot allow him to return to ordinary human society. Still, she reassures him that he has nothing to fear, and reveals that Koike is with them as well. At the dawn, the wreck of the cruise ship continues sinking into the depths of the ocean. Deep beneath the waves, near the remains of the wreckage, Kakero quietly carries the unconscious bodies of Akari and Yuzuru. Looking at them, he chuckled to himself and wonders whether they sank by their own misfortune or through someone else's care. Smiling, he remarks that it's quite a lie. His eyes glow brightly in the darkness as he continues drifting through the depths, carrying them away from the wreckage.